Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin season versus altcoin season. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, of course, if you've lived in the Cryptoverse for long enough, I'm sure you will have heard things like altcoin season. And in bear markets, many people often dream about altcoin seasons that occurred during bull runs. But one of the things I wanted to talk about in this video is to really distinguish Bitcoin season from altcoin season. And in this instance, we're referring to basically anything that is not Bitcoin as an altcoin, although oftentimes I sort of put Ethereum in a different basket than the rest of the altcoin market. So the way you can understand this chart is we go up here and we pick an asset. In this case, we picked Bitcoin. And I'm looking at an ROI, or a return on investment time frame, of over the last 90 days. And what it's looking at is, has Bitcoin been outperforming or underperforming the top 50 cryptocurrencies? Obviously, Bitcoin's one of them. So has it been performing the 49 cryptocurrencies that come directly after Bitcoin by market capitalization over the last 90 days? Now, if the altcoin market has been outperforming Bitcoin, then this orange line that you see sort of going through the page is up in this upper region, in the red region. If it's up there, you could say that altcoins are outperforming Bitcoin, or you might call it altcoin season. On the other hand, if this metric is down here in the green, you might call it Bitcoin season. Okay? However, not all altcoin seasons or Bitcoin seasons mean the same thing. Okay? And that's something that we really have to understand. Bitcoin season does not always mean that the price of Bitcoin is going up. It could also mean that the price of Bitcoin is going sideways while the rest of the market goes down. Now, maybe you think that sort of thing never really happens, but that's not actually true. You can see that it occurred back in May when we went into Bitcoin season for a few weeks, and really leading up to that as well in April and really in May. You can see that we were in fact in Bitcoin season. But if you think back to April and May, April Bitcoin was going down, but in May Bitcoin was sort of going sideways. But if you overlay the Bitcoin dominance, in this case it includes stablecoins, though we have made the case many times that excluding stablecoins does make a lot of sense when you're trying to figure out how it's doing with respect to just the altcoin market and not the stablecoin market. But what you'll notice is that the dominance of Bitcoin, this blue line, was going up back in May while Bitcoin was going sideways. So when you come back over to this chart and you look at when we went into Bitcoin season over here in May, it's not because Bitcoin was going up on its USD pair. It's because it was going sideways and the altcoin market was dropping, right? That's the reason. Again, it's not because Bitcoin is going parabolic or anything like that. So you need to remember that Bitcoin season does not mean that Bitcoin is necessarily going up. It could just mean that it's outperforming the rest of the market on average. In the same way, altcoin season does not always mean that all altcoins are going parabolic. Sometimes it could just simply mean they're slightly outperforming Bitcoin. We saw plenty of cryptocurrencies outperform Bitcoin in some of these counter-trend rallies that we've seen this year, although oftentimes a lot of these altcoins are fairly quickly, giving those gains back whenever we see another leg down. But again, these are nuances of this metric that you have to understand. And, coming up here into the altcoin season range back in, the August and September timeframe when we had the hype behind the Ethereum merge, yes, it was exciting. And Ethereum and some other altcoins were outperforming Bitcoin. But this here was not the same as this alt season over here. This alt season back in 2021 was during the bull run, right? So it was during the bull run. So that was where you actually saw altcoins giving really a lot of gains. And that is sort of what people spend the entire bear market wishing for, right? You spend years wishing for it. It comes and then it's gone within like a few weeks or a few months, and then you spend another 4 years wishing for it again, right? This is kind of how it goes. And I mean, not always do you have to wait 4 years. Sometimes you sort of get mini alt seasons throughout the accumulation phase. But you'll note that not all alt seasons are the same. Sometimes it just means that the altcoin market as a whole is slightly outperforming Bitcoin. Other times, it could mean that the altcoin market as a whole is drastically outperforming Bitcoin. If you look over here during this altcoin season back in 2021, and we go back to this chart, this was when the Bitcoin dominance was just falling off a cliff. A lot of people think I'm just always bullish on the dominance of Bitcoin. That's not true. I mean, I've been thinking it has to go up at some point before this bear market can really be decisively over. But back over here, I was actually quite bearish on the Bitcoin dominance. We even put out videos calling for the Ethereum tsunami. The last video I put out in 2020 was Ethereum, remember the end of December, because Ethereum was trading for like $700, and we'd already seen Bitcoin go up, and the general thesis was that the dominance would go down, the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation would go parabolic, and altcoins would go parabolic. And that's what happened, right? I mean, the dominance fell off a cliff. So that alt season was very different than sort of this one over here, where the dominance did go down some, but nothing like what it did back in 2021. So when you look at this, the more important thing to think about is preparing for that destination before you get there, okay? So for instance, if you were to wait until Bitcoin gets to Bitcoin season, and maybe you wait a few weeks or a few months in, and then you decide to capitulate your altcoins to Bitcoin once they've been bleeding for a couple of months, oftentimes we can go back the other way for a while. So typically, if you're in altcoin season, you likely want to be scaling out back to Bitcoin. And if you're in Bitcoin season, typically the idea is that eventually it'll go back the other way. So you don't really want to be the schmuck that waits until it gets down here to really take that trade, or develop the thesis that you think the altcoin market is going to bleed against Bitcoin once it's already down there. Once we get down there, we can spend a couple months there, but it's all about planning for it when you get there, or planning for it before you get there. If you look at where we are now, you can see that this indicator has been in a downtrend really since September, right? The merge sort of marked that local top on this indicator by Ethereum. And ever since then, it's been in a local downtrend. Now, this is kind of messy, so I would suggest adding a 30-day SMA just to sort of get a better average and really just remove the noise. And what you'll notice is that this indicator is clearly showing a path to Bitcoin season, right? That's what it's showing so far. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't, hang around in here for a while like it has before actually going there. But to me, it certainly looks like this indicator is showing a path to Bitcoin season, meaning it's showing a path to a time period when Bitcoin should outperform the altcoin market, okay? So that is something that I think is worth considering. Now, if that were the case, you have to think about, well, what would cause that? Is it because Bitcoin's going to go up and the altcoin market doesn't go with it? Or is it because Bitcoin's going to go sideways and the altcoin market's going to drop? Or is it because Bitcoin's going to drop and the altcoin market is going to drop harder? One of the things we learned from 2018 is that Bitcoin can go sideways for a while the altcoin market gets really apathetic and people just sort of get bored of their altcoins and they move on to something else. They capitulate their altcoins and they just sort of throw in the towel. Oftentimes, this is sort of like a necessary component to sort of finalize the bear market. And arguably, we are heading in that direction. Now, if you look at the dominance of Bitcoin back in 2018, one of the things that you may notice is that, again, here the dominance of Bitcoin went up, but it started going up, really right here. And part of that was Bitcoin was going up and then it came back down, right? And then it went up and then it came back down. And then it slowly just sort of died off. And then during the capitulation, the dominance was sort of going more or less sideways. I mean, you could argue that it went slightly up during this time, but the main move to the upside by the dominance actually occurred while Bitcoin was going sideways and not during its capitulation. So that is something important to consider. The other thing that I think it's always a worthwhile reminder of, and I've mentioned this many times, is that the dominance in this case includes stablecoins, right? So yes, Bitcoin's dominance, including stablecoins, has really been flirting with these lows for a while. But as always, if you were to go look at the dominance excluding stablecoins, which I think is relevant, you can see that it's simply been putting in higher lows since May of 2021. So bottomed over here, around 42 or maybe even less than 41%. And then, 42, 43%. Over here it was 44.7% or so. If we sort of zoom in and actually get the exact number, you can see it bottomed at 44.49%, and then here 44.59%, and so on and so forth, right? So excluding stablecoins, this has been putting in higher lows, but I think it's an interesting way to look at this metric, to look at the 90-day ROI, smooth it out with a moving average, and see where Bitcoin compares to the rest of the market. You could also look at other things like the 30-day ROI if you're curious about shorter time frames and see kind of where things stack up as well, or the 60-day ROI just to see, is it moving back up in the short term, right? Could there be sort of like a mini bounce on all Bitcoin pairs? I think it's an interesting way to look at the metric. The other thing that's kind of useful about this metric is that the dominance of the asset, you could choose other assets as well to look at the dominance of. For instance, what if you're actually heavy on Ethereum because you just want to take on more risk and you think Ethereum is going to do better? If you think that, if you look at the Ethereum or if you look at, say, like the Ethereum dominance versus everything else, now in this case, it's treating Bitcoin as in the basket with everything else, right? So it's kind of weird to think about. Now you're thinking about Ethereum as the thing that when it comes down to the green area, it's Ethereum season. And when we're up here in the red area, it would be everything else season, which might not really make a whole lot of sense because, if it's Bitcoin season, there's a good chance that the altcoin market is dropping as well. But if it is coming up here, there is something to be said about alt ether pairs could be showing signs of or showing certain areas of strength or weakness, depending on sort of the time and where it is. So I think it's an interesting way to look at the market, and it's been trending to the upside here, meaning it's trending towards the not Ethereum season over the last, really since April. We put in a low and then a higher low and a higher low and a higher low. So it's slowly going higher, but you could also see it's been putting in lower highs as well. So it'll be interesting to see where this ultimately breaks. But I thought that was a cool part of this indicator, is that you could actually flip around between various assets to see kind of, how is it performing against other assets or basically everything else, right? But hopefully this is an interesting way to look at the market, and it can hopefully show you, the general trend of, are we heading into Bitcoin season or are we heading into altcoin season, right? Back over here, when it bottomed, this is a good example, right? When it bottomed in Bitcoin season in late December of 2020 and early 2021, that doesn't mean you need to go put everything into Bitcoin, right? Because it's, when it's down here, you typically want to start planning for it going in the other direction. When it's up here, you probably want to plan for it to go back in the other direction, and so on and so forth, right? And the cycle goes on, and the cycle goes on, and the cycle goes on. But anyways, if you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. And we do have Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Of course, you can access this chart on the Pro tier, so make sure you check it out. Link is in the description below. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.